Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Backgammon is beautiful. In this, my 52nd and anniversary video, a year's worth of backgammon learning content, I am joined by Geoff Hall, currently ranked in the top 5 in the UK. It's a pleasure, Geoff, to have you here to join us. How are you doing today?
Thanks, Dan. Very well, thanks. And actually, 52 has got some significance for me as well because I'm an avid card player and there's 52 cards in the deck. So hopefully that will give us good vibes for this lesson or video that we're going to produce.
I hope so. And you clearly got a memo about the striped blue shirt. So what better way to spend a backgammon anniversary with
this is quite quiet for me. Martin Barkwell, the England captain, quite often comments on my shirts. So I'm sure he's quite disappointed that I didn't wear a louder one for this video.
Before we start, Geoff, would you like to just say a little bit about your background, some context to who you are as a player and person?
Okay, a little bit. A maths teacher some years ago, stopped a while back, then went into business. I then started playing some of the casino games, particularly blackjack. I've got a mathematical background. And then I started designing some of the games. So some of my games are quite a lot of my games are over in America. It means I get to travel to Vegas quite a bit. And then I thought about 3 years ago, what can I do to enhance my social life? And it was either poker, backgammon or table tennis. Table tennis, probably my joints won't allow me to be like I used to be. So it was a toss-up between poker and backgammon. And I chose backgammon, and I really enjoyed the meeting the people and the social side of it. And I find it very competitive, which suits me. And so that's where I am now. I'm still sort of designing games a little bit, but a lot of my attention is used to try and improve my backgammon skills, which, as you know, Dan, is easier said than done.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for that insight into yourself, Geoff, and always a pleasure to see you at tournaments. You're a regular on the tournament circuit and always good spirited and well mannered. So thank you for coming on today.
Well, I appreciate that. And I'm talking of tournaments, congratulations on your recent Midlands Open.
Thank you.
Well done and well deserved. And I did have a question actually, which is like, you've done a lot of videos. Before we get into this, have you found that doing these videos has actually improved your play a reasonable amount?
Absolutely, yes. Having the Grandmasters on my channel and learning from them, having those deep discussions with Thomas Tenland, Mark Olsen, all of the people I've had on in the past, Will Snellings, but also creating the content for my lessons and compiling positions and analysing positions and just spending time improving. I say to my English students, if you want to get better at English, you've got to spend time actually working on the skills. It's not a kind of magic bullet, is there, to improve? So
that's a good point. And I think I did hear somewhere ages ago that if you're learning something, just listening to it helps. Writing it down helps further. But doing both actually increases that learning capability. And because you're designing these lessons, and like you said, you've spoken to some fantastic guests who are extremely credible and highly proficient at the game. And I'm sure the fact you're writing out notes and that has increased your capacity to learn perhaps quicker than if you were just reading a book, for example.
Yes, absolutely. And it's paid dividends in terms of PR play. I'm playing at a lot lower performance level than I was 6 months ago, from that focused learning, from those discussions. So yeah.
Tournament wins that come along with it.
Well, usually the better you play, the more you win. You would kind of hope so, at least, wouldn't you? So yeah. Okay, so you're here today, Geoff, anyway, to talk to us about the Eyesight Method. This is something new. This is going to be a comprehensive video, really, on different ways to use eyesight over the board. and I'm looking forward to it. So should we get started?
Yeah, let's go. I'm looking forward to it with some trepidation because skills aren't great, and I have done a few diagrams and things and worked with paint. I'm no good at PowerPoint, so excuse the limited technical side, but hopefully people will find some of the things interesting and useful to them.
I'm sure they will. Yes.
I can start off by just saying that I think most people are familiar with these racing cubes. On a longish race, people talk about 10% being this sort of doubling criteria. And those who take it a step further are familiar with doubling at 8% ahead and their opponent taking as long as they're not more than around 12% behind. So if an opponent has a pip count of 100 and you're there with a pip count of 92, then you should be looking at doubling. And if your opponent doubles you on 100 and you're sitting there on 112, then you're just on a borderline take. So this is what I call the typical pip count. What Eyesight does is perhaps more for medium short races and certainly bear-offs. It starts to take into account adjustments that affect or certain influences of the positions of the checkers, where they are, how many checkers you've got on certain points, how many checkers you've got off. So Eyesight takes a different element into the game and produces, hopefully, reasonably accurate doubling or cubing decisions based on the aspects that are contained within the Eyesight method.
I see.
So I can start off. Probably the best thing is to show you a position, and if I've got this right, you're now looking at what I would call a bear-off position, because there's no other boards pieces to be bringing in to the home board.
Yes.
And so yellow and red are both bearing off. And if you look at the pip count, yellow has a pip count of 51 and red has a pip count of 49. So purely on a pip counting method, this is a no double. If you use the pip count, because you're actually 2 pips down. But like I say, what Eyesight does is it adjusts this pip count. So it takes your initial pip count and it adjusts it for both sides in order to determine whether there's a cube decision and what that cube decision is. So what Eyesight does to adjust this pip count is, I'm going to bring it up, hopefully, it does several things, Dan.
Yes.
It takes the pip count, and then it looks at not just the position of the checkers, but how many checkers you've got left in your home board. And it adds 1 pip for each additional checker on the board that your opponent has compared to you. So if you've got 5 checkers off and your opponent hasn't got any checkers off, then your opponent would be penalised +5 to that pip count. And then it goes on to look at how stacked your points are, because the more you have on one stack, especially the lower points, the worse it is. And again, it adds 2 pips for each checker that you have more than 2 on the 1 point. So you're allowed to have 2 without being penalised. Any more than that, you start getting penalised. 1 pip for more than 2 on the 2 point, and 1 pip for any more checkers than 3 on the 3 point. Again, this will make sense as we start doing the examples. The other thing that the Eyesight and other count systems take into account are empty spaces, particularly on the higher points. And Eyesight penalises 1 pip for each empty space that an opponent has on points 4, 5, and 6. However, that's only if your opponent does have checkers on the corresponding point. So if you've both got the 4 point open, there's no penalty. But again, that will become clear as we do the examples. Finally, there's 1 pick for each additional crossover compared to your opponent. Again, there's a second example which will deal with crossovers, so I'll come to that shortly. So let's go back to this position again. So like I said, we've got yellow as a pick count of 51 and red as a pick count of 49. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hopefully bring in, so that we can follow it together, the adjustment table that Eyesight includes. So if you look at yellow's checkers, yellow has actually got less checkers than red because they've got 1 off. So yellow doesn't get penalised for that. And then if you work your way across, you'll see that yellow has got 4 checkers on the 3-point. That's 1 extra checker than it's allowed, if you like, because you're allowed up to 3 without penalty. So that 4th checker is going to cost yellow one pick. Mm-hmm. So yellow's pick goes from 51 to 52. However, on the 2 and 1 points, they're fine. There's no extra checkers there. So yellow's final adjusted pick count is 52. What about red? Well, red is on 49s on a lower score to start with. However, he's got 1 less checker off than yellow. So he gets penalised +1 for that. So red starts off at 50. I like to work my way across from the 6 down to the 1 point personally, but people will find their own preference. If you look, there's a gap on the 4 point. So there's another penalty there. So now red goes up to 51. He's fine on the 3 point, but he has got 1 additional checker on the 2 point that he's allowed, because you're allowed 2 on the 2. So now he goes up to 52. And finally, on the 1 point, he's got 2 additional checkers, and each one of those is +2 picks. So there's another 4 picks to add on to give a total of 56. So we're left with an adjusted count for red, hopefully that's of 56, an adjusted count of 52 for yellow. Now, if we were to use the 10% or 8% for doubling, like we do for pick count, mm-hmm. then the difference there is 4, which isn't quite 8%. And so we don't use percentages now to make the decision. What we use is a different criteria. And I'm going to bring it up, and it is, hopefully. Okay, this is, once you've done your adjusted counts, what you then do is you increase the player on rolls count by 1/6. So that's yellow in this case. And this will give me my total, my criteria total. Now I can go ahead and see if I've got a Q decision.
Yes.
And again, this will become clearer as we do this with the example. If my final total is no more than 6 higher than my opponent, bearing in mind that it's likely to be higher now because I've just added a 1/6 of my total on to my adjusted count. But if it's no more than 6 higher, then I can double. If it's no more than 5 higher, then I can redouble. And there is a difference between being able to double and redouble.
Yes.
And from the opponent's perspective, if the total is at least 2 higher than his total, then he can take. So this little, being 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 higher within that boundary is the doubling window, what's known as the doubling window, where there's some sort of double take action. Mm-hmm. So let's have a look at the final, like I said, the final total. What I did was, to adjust this pick count, we go back to the 52. Eyesight says you divide by 6 or add a 6th on, same thing. So divide by 6, you can round down. So 6 is into 52, go 8 and a bit. Mm-hmm. And then you now add that to your adjusted count to get your final total. And 8 added to 52 gives this figure of 60. That is your final total. Now you can make your cube decision. Are you within 6 higher than your opponent? Well, you're 4 higher. So this suggests that not only is it a double take, if you had the cube your side, it would be a redouble take as well.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of players will look at this position and see a scattering of checkers and look at the pick count and say, you know what, I'm going to hold off a roll. I'm not so sure that this is a double. But in fact, it's a clear double because you're only 4 higher. If your final total had been 62, now you're 6 higher. Now it's a very, very borderline double.
Mm-hmm.
But 60, it's a comfortable double. And if I put in XG, the result, you'll see that actually it's a blunder not to double in that position.
Yes. Yeah, so I can see.
And of course, it's a blunder to pass as well, because you're comfortably within that window, because your final criteria total is 4 higher than your opponent's total.
Yes. Interesting. I think it's very common, and GMs have said the same on my channel, that improving players and maybe some intermediates just wait to give the cube, and they keep waiting and then, you know, there's this whole trail of blunders, you know, where they've just missed it time and time again. Yes. So it's...
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Nothing more annoying than seeing 4 or 5, you know, green or worse still red errors where this would be a red blunder.
Yeah.
Doubling in this position. And of course, like you've just said, if you continue, you both roll average rolls and you continue not doubling, then you're going to pick up blunders each time that you don't double. So this eyesight is excellent, in my opinion, for that. It's really, really good at picking up, you know, these, you know, giving you the criteria, if you like, to make that cube decision. I'm bringing up the position on Extreme Gammon, so hopefully you'll see this on XG and it will come up. Because what I want to show you is something a little bit more with the, just see, get it right. So there's the same position. To double tap. We're also seeing that if we move the cube here, that it will become a redouble. And again, it's a take as well.
And it's a blunder to miss a redouble.
Yes, it's borderline blunder. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Now, Eyesight is one of a few count systems. There are other count systems. And sometimes it's interesting. If you want to compare them, you can actually look at this analyze button at the top and look at the race formulas. Now, obviously, pick count tells you no double. And we've already said the weakness of a pick count in a shorter race.
Sure.
But Trice and Keith are both very popular count systems as well. I'm not here to say that Eyesight's better or worse than any of them. It's an alternative. But it's interesting that both Trice and Keith both make this a redouble take as well.
Yes.
But we will see an example later on where it's a lot closer. Don't forget, when we did that final criteria of 60, it was only 4 higher. But we will see an example where it's a little bit more. Now what I'm going to do is just change it slightly. I'm going to slide the 5 point to the 4 point.
Mm-hmm.
What that does, it doesn't affect yellow's count at all. We know that yellow has got an adjusted count of 52. What it does do is it affects red's adjusted count.
Mm-hmm.
Because now there's no gap on the 4 point. And there's, it started off 1 pick lower as well. In fact, red's, without that gap there now, red's pick count starts at 48 and then goes to 49 for not having the extra checker off. Then it goes to 50 because he's got 1 extra checker on the 2 point, and then still gets penalised 4 picks for those 2 extra checkers on the 1 point. So red actually ends up with an adjusted pick count now of 54. And I haven't written those out. So what you've got is 52 and 54. We know that when we use this adjustment of dividing by 1/6 of yellow's count, that we got a total of 60. But now we're faced with red having an adjusted count of 54. So the difference now is 6. So when the difference is 6, this is where it gets really close down. It's a close double generally. And again, I'm going to put this in and you'll see that with a difference of 6, it's hardly any, you're certainly not blundering now by not doubling.
It's pretty much borderline there, isn't it? Yes.
Correct. You're absolutely. And interestingly now, because the difference is 6, you should only redouble if your difference is 5 or less. So if I throw the cube here, what's your opinion on whether do you think there should be a redouble now in this situation?
So there's a difference of 6, is that?
6. Correct.
And you redouble when there's 5.
Well, it should be 5. So instead of being 60 and 54, ideally you want your opponent to be on 55 to be redoubling, or you want your count to be 59.
So because he's below 55, then it is a redouble, wouldn't it? With a 6 pip, with 6 difference.
Actually, working it wrong. The 6 pip, the wider the margin, the worse it is. Because,
okay.
And this is what I say. This is something that you get. Yellow is actually starting on the higher total because you've adjusted to get the final total. You've added 1/6 on to get 60 for yellow. And now I've got 54 for red with this moving this checker down. So the difference is 6. Ideally, you wanted the difference to be greater.
Okay.
You want red to not be quite within that. But if you look, because the difference is 6, and you analyse a double action on a redouble, again, this is extremely close. You'll see that, again, it wouldn't be a blunder, really, if you did redouble. We're talking about 0.02. But XG is saying that this is a no redouble take. So this particular example is a great example of how Eyesight has nailed both the double decision, because it's 6 away, and the redouble decision, because it's 6 away and not 5 away. Again, if you look at the race formulas, if you look at Keith has this as a double take, Trice has it as a redouble take. What that means is Trice would go ahead and redouble as well. Whereas actually, although it's small, the correct, according to XG, and I haven't rolled these out, it might even alter, is a no redouble take, which is where we agree with the Keith count. Because Keith is saying, yes, it's a double take, but it's not a redouble take. It's not strong enough. So that just shows, just by tweaking, just by moving one checker down, you can really alter the position on this.
Yeah, of course. And I guess here, if he was match play rather than a money game, if White was trailing, then he would tip more towards a redouble, wouldn't it?
Yes, that's right. And I will show one match play example towards the end.
Okay.
I don't want to bog down too much with match play, but you're absolutely right. Match play changes your doubling criteria itself, because you might not be doubling it. You might be doubling at a much lower point than you would in a regular money game type situation. So again, just to get familiar with, how the Eyesight works. What I've got here is a situation where it's medium long race. There's still a little bit left in. Yellow and red both have checkers to bring in. So now we bring in this thing called crossovers. If you look at both of the home boards, there's no penalty for either player at the moment. If you look at the pick counts, yellow is 5 ahead. Not enough to double using regular pick count theory.
Of course.
However, if we go back to adjusting the pick count, we found that one of the things was you have +1 pick for each additional crossover compared to your opponent. Now, this does have an impact on this position, which is that yellow has got each crossover has got 1, 2 to get here, and then 1, 2, 3 to bring them into your home board. Mm-hmm. So yellow's got a total of 5 crossovers to get into that. So yellow's adjusted pick count would actually be 100.
Yes, and by crossover, Geoff, just for the audience, you mean moving the checker from one quadrant of a board to another quadrant?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, yes. So this checker here only has to go once to get into the home board, but this checker here has to go once to here and then once more. Yeah. So both these checkers will count as 2 crossovers, whereas this will just count as 1. So there's a total of 5, which actually gives an adjusted pick count of 100. Red has got 1, 2, 3 to get down to here, another 3 to get in, that's 6. So each of these are worth 2, so that's it. And then 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's a total of 10 crossovers for red. So red's pick count goes from 100 to 110.
So the number of crossovers is equal to the amount of quadrant shifts to get into the home board, to bring all the checkers into the home board.
That's correct. So these both take 2 crossovers. These will just take 1 each.
Yes.
These will take. So you've got this adjusted pick count of 100 and 110. If you divide 100 by 6 to get your final count total, 6 is going to 100 roughly 16 times. Mm-hmm. And now 100 plus 16 is 116. Unfortunately, I haven't written it out on this example, but so if you've got 116 as your final total and 110 as the adjusted pick count for red, there's a difference of 6. So that would suggest it's a really small, very small double, even in this position, whereas your regular pick count wouldn't. And in fact, I'm going to bring this up on XG, just to show. Just get this. There it is with XG. Again, we're talking
completely on a knife edge, yeah.
But I did this example on purpose because what I wanted to show was Eyesight agrees with XG, or XG agrees with Eyesight, that it is a double take. If we look at the race formulas now, they're all stating no double. So Eyesight's managed to agree, at least with plus on XG, that it is a very, very small double take. And it's that small that all I have to do is move this checker from the 5 point to the 4 point. And this is where I show like minor changes. And now it becomes no double.
That's right. And that's a great exercise on XG in general, bringing up a Q position, which is borderline, and manipulating the checkers into pass and take. So I think that's an excellent learning tool in itself. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think again, if somebody doubles in that position, they're hardly committing the ultimate blunder of 0.008. I'm showing some examples that are really, or this particular example that's really close. But the next one, which I've got more pictures and things, is one that encapsulates everything that I've talked up to now, which I'm hopefully will clarify it for your audience, which is a little bit of crossover, little bit of stacking points, empty points. There's no checkers off, so there's no. However, this time, and I will give you some help, Dan, I'll include the table. I'd like you to tell me what the adjusted counts are, bearing in mind that if you look at the pick count again, 63, 63, you'll be thinking, pick count wise, no way is this a double. But let's see what the adjusted counts are. So hopefully you can lead me through this one. We're on 63. What would yellow, in your opinion, how are you going to penalise or adjust yellow's pick count here?
Okay, so I'll go through the list you have up on the left, and this information I will copy into the video description, by the way, so you can refer to that yourself to go through positions. So yellow, so 1 pip for each additional checker on the on the board compared to it. So that's not there's no penalty for that initially.
That's right.
So 2 pips for each checker more than 2 on 1 point, so no penalty for that. 1 pip for each checker more than 2 on the 2 point. No. 1 pip or more than 3 on the 3 point. No. 1 pip for each empty space. No empty spaces. And 1 pip for each crossover. So I would adjust from 63 to 64 to account for the crossover.
Yes, so you get an adjusted pip count for 64. Well done. And as you get used to this, you'll find quicker ways to get to that total. But I'm glad you did through it, because it does explain it better. I tend to work from left to right. So I would do the crossover first, then I'd look at the 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. But you just do it at your own pace, what you're comfortable. So I'm happy that you worked through the list, Dan. Mm-hmm. Let's try it for red and see what you get for red then.
Okay, so let me do it from the other direction, as you mentioned. So if there's going to be a penalty of 3 for the 3 crossovers, so I would take it from 63 to 66 pips.
Yeah.
Then I can see that there's a gap on the 4 point, and the opponent has checkers on their 4 points. That's another penalty point. So that takes it to 67. And then there's an extra checker on the 2 point, so that will be another penalty of 1 pip. And then there is 2 extra checkers, 2 pips at each checker more than 2 on. So 1 extra checker is a 2 penalty pip. So that's 3, 4, 5, 7. So a total of 70 pips after the adjustment.
So you get 64 and 70. Let's see what we've got. Well done. Hopefully that's showing. So those are the adjusted counts, 64 and 70. Now what you have to do is you have to get your final criteria total or whatever for yellow by dividing by 6. So any idea what that would be?
10 point something.
Yeah, so just about 10 is good. And so you actually get 74 as your final total. And your opponent is on 70. So you're just 4 higher. You didn't want to be much higher, but you're 4 higher. So that suggests, hopefully, that it is it a double?
So you said that the doubling window is it 2, 3, 4, 5, 6?
And 6 as well. Anything up to, as long as you're not more than 6 higher, you should be able to double. So if this total was 77, then I wouldn't be doubling.
Okay, so it is a double because it falls within the doubling window.
You're well within the double. In fact, if you were down, if you went down to 71, it's probably a pass then, because your opponent has to, you can't be less than 2 higher. And again, these numbers will start to make more and more sense. So I think I've actually got a sheet that will explain it more after this, Dan, but okay. You're absolutely right. It is, as you can see, it's a double take. Mm-hmm. Again, it's pretty much a blunder not to double in that position. And I've been guilty of this in the past. I'm thinking, well, it doesn't look like a double. Even just looking at it. Mm-hmm. But it's quite a clear double, and it's a blunder not to double in that position. So I'm just looking at the just to go through, and I just want to like in summary about when you get this this final adjusted total down. Mm-hmm. Let's say that if your criteria total, that's what I've called it, is 60. Mm-hmm. Okay, then the cube action is as follows. You don't double at all if your opponent's adjusted total is more than 6 lower. So if his adjusted pip count is 53 or 52 or 51, etc., there's no double there. Mm-hmm. As soon as it hits that 6 away or less, i.e. 54, 55, 56, 57 or 58, it becomes a double take. And that's this doubling window, really. and this is for a regular cash game. If it's 55, if he's within 5, 55, 56, 57, or 58 of your total of 60, then it's a redouble take. And strictly speaking, if your opponent's total, if you're on 60 and you've done your final conversion of 60 and your opponent's total is 59, then or higher, then it should be double or redouble pass. So that just sort of confirms it. But like I say, the good thing with the videos is viewers can play it back, they can pause it, they can do some examples on XG, and just get a feel for getting this adjusted total.
I think absolutely. So maths, comes easier to some people than others, but definitely going back over it and going through the maths and practicing by setting up positions on XG is super useful. So here we can see then, so 53 or anything lower is a no double, 52, 51, 50 and so on. 59 and higher is a double pass, and anything between that is a double take, basically, or a redouble take. 55. It's 56.
Yeah, it's this sort of window where there's this opportunity to throw the cube and get a decision based within this doubling window. But like I say, it does take a little bit of practice, and it's not always as straightforward as it looks. And so the more you do this, the more you practice adjusting, getting your adjusted pick count, the better. And the quicker you will become. And eventually you'll be able to look at the board and you say, look, my pick count's 48. I've got three adjustments to make, so that's 51. And my opponent's is 47. So I'm only 4 higher, so I can double. Yeah. It starts to become a little bit more second nature when you practice a little bit more.
Absolutely. And I think people who are already familiar and use the Keith count, that has a similar, accounting for wastage. So there are some overlaps between different kind of formulas, aren't there? If you've been using one for a while, then picking up another one is not like learning a new instrument. There is crossover there. So
you mentioned, and I'm trying not to include too much information to overload everybody, because ideally, and you said it yourself, a lot of players are missing those initial opportunities to send the cube over when they should be.
Yes.
And those that can improve just that part will improve their PR and their performance considerably. But what I am going to show you is also another feature that Eyesight does, and that is it can give you an estimate or an idea of what your winning percentage is. And that tends to be perhaps a bit more critical, like you said, at certain match play. And again, I'll give an example of how that fits in with a match play. So I'm going to bring up a position here, and before I talk about converting it, I think I'd be right in saying a lot of players would have trouble saying, what are my winning chances here as yellow? Pick count is, I've picked another example where the pick count is equal. Yellow has got 2 less checkers off. But it looks, it's difficult to come to I've got X% chance of winning this game. So the first thing, before we get to this conversion to percentages, you still need to be able to do an adjusted count. And you're getting, I hope now, a little bit better at this, Dan. So I don't want to put you on the spot. But
I have a vote of confidence.
And I have written them up again once it's adjusted. So yellow, who's got a current pick count of 48, are there any adjustments that you can see for yellow?
There are no adjustments for yellow.
This stack on the 5 point it's not ideal, but it's okay in the sense that it doesn't get paid, it doesn't get adjusted for. So yellow's pick count remains at 48. Red, however, with yellow having 2 less checkers off, we can straight away say that red jumps to 50.
Yes.
Can you see any other adjustments if we scan across? I don't see.
So there's an extra checker on the 3-point, and there's an extra checker on the ace point.
Right. Now, the extra checker on the 3 is allowed. That always used to catch me out. Because you are 3 on the 3 and 2 on the 2. That's the way I remember it. So you're allowed 3 on the 3 and 2 on the 2. And if there was a 4, if that one was here, yes, you would penalise it. But you're right, you've picked out this is the key, the extra checker on the 1 point. So we're already up to 50, and now with this extra checker here,
52.
52. And just like magic, I hope, we've got the 2 counts, 52 and 48.
Yes.
So again, I want to know if I'm doubling this, before I look at percentage-wise, I want to know, would I be doubling this in a cash game or a 0-0 in a match? And I need to convert this to a final criterion total. So if I buy 6, and 6 is in 48, if you're good with your 6's timetable, you'd know it was 8.
8, yes. Yeah.
And then you add that to the 48 to get 56. So again,
so it's a double take.
Correct. Well done. And again, as red, maybe it's not just the yellow side. Red might be feeling, I'm not sure I want to take it. You know, two checkers off. I don't know. Some positions are quite innocuous.
Yes.
This gives you a really good guide, and I will show you on XG. The only thing is, I don't want to show it yet because I want to move into this. How do I work out what my percentage chances of winning? So you're right, it is a double take. But what is yellow's chances of winning this game? And what Eyesight does is it takes a formula, it says, go back to your adjusted count. So we go back to our adjusted counts. Look at the difference between them, which is 4. Double it, which is 8. And add it to 80. That gives you 88. And now, once you've done that, you subtract 1/3 of the roller's adjusted score. And 1/3 of 48 is 16. And you take that away from your 88.
Okay.
And that's 72. That's your adjusted. Now, again, this is, like I said, this is the final thing that I'm going to go through and through. So if you want to convert to a winning percentage, then you calculate your adjusted pick count for each player, find the difference, double it, add it to 80, and subtract 1/3 of the player that's on roll, in this case yellow's count, adjusted count. So we got 72, and if it's higher than 68, we should double, and if it's higher than 70, we redouble. So that does fit that thing that we've just worked out using the Eyesight conversion. We both said it was a double, and in fact it's a redouble. If it's less than 76, so if you haven't got that more than 7, then your opponent has a take. So this is another way to find out whether you've got a cube decision. I don't recommend it over what we've just done previously, because this can lose its accuracy more, and the conversion is much easier. What we did, divided by 6, and working on that basis. This is quite reasonable for giving you an idea of where you stand as far as your percentage winning chances go. So if we go back to this one, which was your position 4 again, with these adjusted counts, which I'm just going to bring up, we said that the difference was 4, double it 8, add it to 80, that's 88, and subtract 1/3 of the yellow, the roller's total, which is 16. So we would estimate that we've got about 72% winning chances. If you actually look at it, it's not far off what the winning chances are. At least it's better than just completely stabbing in the dark.
Yes.
I've got an idea, maybe we're favourite. you know. And it does, sometimes you'll get it quite accurate, other times it can be thrown out a little bit, especially when some of these home boards are skewing. So I wouldn't recommend it to make your doubling decision necessarily. I would use the Eyesight formula that we talked about beginner lesson. But it's nice to see that 72% is not far away actually.
Can you explain, Geoff, to the audience why would you want to know your winning percentage in positions like this? Is it because of the take point? Like, could you say a little bit more kind of on?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're absolutely right. I mean, the percentages that really come into mind for me is when we discuss the take points. So in cash games, it's consistent. You know, the doubling window is consistent. Not so in
match play,
cash game. So I'm going to bring up this position in XG, and hopefully, if it's going to allow me to, you can see that it's not a blunder this time, but it's a reasonable error not to double in this position in a cash game. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick an extreme example, and I'm going to open up XG, a 5-point match, where it's a redouble.
And of course, in 5-point matches, you know, the scores can massively influence cube action, can't they?
Yes. And again, I've kept the example reasonably simple to try and prove a point down, which is we calculated yellow's winning percentage here as around 72%. We as yellow are 3 away. We've got the cube on our side. So if we double, great, we can win the match. In fact, we go above. We're wasting a bit of our redouble because we go to 6. Also, if we double, or redouble rather, then red is going to be very happy to throw the cube back and play for the match, because you're going to win it anyway. So red's take point, if we were to redouble here, depends on what happens if red passes. If red was to pass here, we would go 4-0 ahead. So we would be just 1 away, and red would still be 5 away. And for those that know match equities, or like some statement where 1 away, 5 away means red is now starting a fresh game is about 16%, just under 16%.
That's right, absolutely.
The match. And so that's his take point.
Yeah.
Because he can either say, I don't want to know about this game, I pass, let me start afresh at 16%. Or he can say, you know what, if you're going to give me that back on 4, I'm throwing at you back on 8. Well, let's just play for the match. Highest rolls win. You know?
Yes.
Probably, you know, if you were playing, you know, somebody who was, you know, clearly superior to you, you might want to be highest rolls win.
Yeah, absolutely. That's match adjustment. And also, I think you can bring up the match equity table, can't you, on XG to kind of actually see the kind of 16%, you know, you're kind of referring to.
There is the match equity table, which will show you that at 1 away, 5 away, it's 15.8.
That's right.
Chance of winning, which it's better than nothing, but you're better off actually taking the cube, because we calculated that yellow's winning chances are about 72%. That means red's winning chances are 28%. Much better than 16.
Yeah.
In fact, so much better, Dan, that in this position, if you were to actually double this, it's a huge blunder, 260 blunder, to give red that opportunity to get back into the match at 28%.
Right. You're giving away 12%, aren't you, in match-winning chances?
You really should be closer to, you should actually be closer to 84, 85% winning chances. in order to be considering a redouble of this magnitude.
Yeah.
And this is where the final bit comes in, where I'm going to put you on the spot here, because what I'm going to do, and you'll notice quite conveniently the XG will disappear, is I'm actually going to remove of yellow, okay? And what I'd like you to do, and we can work together on this, is find out what you think yellow's percentage winning chances are now. They're obviously going to be higher than 72. So there's your clue. Take her off. So yellow's pick count is now gone down to 43.
Yes.
There's no further adjustment there. Do you agree?
Mm-hmm.
Red, you've got to be careful now, because red, although his pick count didn't change at 48, he's worse off by 3 now.
That's right.
So red's pick count becomes
51.
51 because of the adjustment for the checkers off. There was one other adjustment, if you remember.
Oh, yeah. So I'm not going to fall for the same trick again. And the 3-pointer. There's 1 extra checker on the ace. So that is a penalty of 2 extra.
Perfect. And I didn't write this out. If I'd have had more. So we've got 43 here and 53 for red as the adjusted count.
Yes.
So what's the difference?
10.
10. Double it.
20.
Add it to 80.
100.
Perfect so far.
This is the easy stuff, yeah.
A third of 43
is about 14.
Well done. That's fine. So 14 away from 100
is 86.
So now we can get a rough idea that yellow's winning chances has jumped up by taking to around 86%.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we double red and they pass, their winning chances by passing are around 16%.
Yeah.
If we're at 86, then by taking, red should be on 14.
Mm-hmm.
So is red better off taking at 14 or giving it up and starting again at 16?
Well, if it was 2 horses, I'd rather bet on the horse at 16%. So it's going to be a pass. Yes.
Well, excellent. And this will show that just removing that checker, which would be a massive pass in a cash game.
Huge, yeah.
But it's a considerable pass.
Yeah, a big pass. Mm.
But again, a lot of people, players, again, they get to this position where they say, well, you know, I'm going to be 84% favourite. Why should I put myself in a position? Because instead of being 80, and in fact, let's just look at our calculation that we did. We got 86, but you can see XG doesn't quite agree with the value. But again, it just gives us a guide. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people would not be redoubling in this position because they wouldn't really know where they stood, what their winning chances were. They might know match equity and they might think, well, I've got to be around 85, 86% to double. But they might not know that this position is 86, bless you, 86%. And this is why this conversion to percentage can be useful. And it's not that difficult once you've done your adjusted counts.
Absolutely. And on a initial double, rather than a redouble, can we just see that decision, Geoff, as you've got XG on?
So, do you want me to put the checker back on the 5 point?
Let's go to the original position. So would you, even though white obviously has a match lead here, which does advise you sometimes about being a bit more cautious. Well, I mean, would you double this as an initial double?
That's a good question. And trust, now you put me on the spot. I only work on this match play. I would have to work out what my doubling point is, because.
Do you want to have a go?
But it's a slightly different thing to what we've discussed. I mean, my guess is for money. And I've got to go back now to what the position was. It was adjusted counts for 52 and 48. So that was 56 and 52, which is reasonable double. At this score, would I double? I could be shown up now.
That might not get this far in the video. You might be okay.
I would be leaning more towards being a little bit more, with the difference being 4 at 2 away. I think you've picked a really good example here, a really close example. I think this is going to be close. I'm not even going to try and work it out. I'm just going to look at it. I knew it had to be close because you picked a killer example there, Dan. I'm even going to plus it.
Yeah.
There you go. Now you want me to find out a 0.07. I guess the good news is whether I said double or no double.
You would have been right either way. Yeah.
Right.
That's great.
Yeah. I don't think I would have been that comfortable throwing it over with that 4 lead, with the adjusted counts having a difference of 4 at 3 away, 5 away. But I would have had to work out the max equities, spent 2 minutes on my clock and still flipped a coin at the end of the day. Because that's how close it was. But when they're a little bit more clear cut, like that example of taking that 5th checker off, that's where it can be useful to know roughly what your percentage chances of winning are.
Absolutely.
But there is another feature called EPC, effective pick count, and Eyesight is very good at converting to EPC, and that can be a very useful feature on certain bear-offs. But that will be something that maybe, if viewers are happy, I'm happy to come back and perhaps next year or later this year discuss EPC and how Eyesight's conversion to EPC can help you make better cube decisions in sort of weird positions. And I'll give you an example of the weird position, something like this situation, where perhaps nobody would really know, oh my gosh, whether or not that was a double or a take even in something like that situation. So I will cover more EPC. I would be using EPC conversion for this, but if any of your viewers want to, post any comments, hopefully not too offensive, based on this performance and the jittery use of paint and XG.
It's been great.
Please do, and I'll be happy to answer any comments that don't involve 4-letter words. If anybody wants to see an EPC conversion, then maybe that might be something to consider.
I think that would be great for a future video, because I think digestible chunks is the message of my channel. Don't try to take on everything at once. Here's a flavour of Eyesight. And for some people who are completely new to Eyesight, it is quite a lot, to take in and go over. And I think one of the great benefits of Eyesight, maybe compared to other counting methods, is all the things you can do with it. It's a bit like one of those screwdrivers where you can change the end. It does winning percentages, it does this, it does that, and that's great. If you practice it, which you have, Geoff, a lot, then it's useful. How often do you use this over the board? Like when you're at tournaments, just out of interest?
Good question. I mean, it tends to be in those sort of close race positions. Whereas I know that a year ago or so, there's definitely situations where I double, where I wouldn't have been doubling a year or so ago. And so it's helped improve that part of my game. So it tends to be that. As far as the long races, I tend to look at the 10% rule.
That's right.
Generally, because there is a bit of arithmetic and maths involved in conversion. But I think if your viewers can take away from this that they can get the pick count, they can adjust it using the Eyesight criteria, and then they can get that final total, then that's a great leap. I think this conversion for percentages is great, but I hardly, as you could see when you put me on the spot, I very, very rarely use that. It's in extreme match conditions. And so I just find that first part of what we've discussed today as being the most useful feature. And if your viewers can go ahead and adjust the count, take into account the crossovers, the number of checkers off, the loaded points, the empty points, and come out with 2 adjusted totals, and then divide 1 by 6 to get that final total, and then make the decision, that is a great leap forward. And I can guarantee that they will not be missing blunder cubes that maybe some of them are missing now.
Absolutely, and that is super useful. And I think you hit the nail on the head earlier, Geoff, when you said it's better than stabbing in the dark. You know, it's better than just looking at a position and not having anything to hold on to. And, you know, in tournaments, you do get a lot of racing decisions. You know, we were both at a tournament on the weekend, and they come up a lot, these racing cubes, these bear-off cubes. So it's good to know something. Otherwise, you could be winning 1 point when you could be winning 2 points, which sometimes is crucial, you know, actually, particularly in a shorter match. And the winning percentages that you came towards at the end, and looking at match winning chances using kind of the Kazaros-Rockwell table, I mean, that is definitely more advanced, but again, something that is super useful to improving your cube play over the board, which can be crucial, you know. And thank you very much, Geoff.
It's just a case of baby steps first, Dan. Get that, you know, practice it, put positions in XG, find out how your adjusted count is leading you to the correct double take decisions, and then just move checkers around and see how they can be affected. Just by moving one checker can be a redouble take, can turn into a no double.
Absolutely.
In extreme conditions. So, enjoy it, play around, and hopefully some of your viewers will become eyesight experts.
I hope so. And this is a great
tournaments, hopefully, as well.
There'll be Geoff Hall experts after this, yeah.
Far from it, but, you know, I like to say, I was baby steps last year or so ago, and I feel I've progressed a little bit in this. I feel comfortable at the board, working out the adjusted counts, working out the double criteria. And I think the viewers will do the same with a bit of practice.
Absolutely. And I should add, you know, as I mentioned at the beginning, this is my 52nd video. You know, I've been creating through a year now, a lot of free learning content. I'm very happy to have the support of people who tune in every week, and the presence of esteemed guests like yourself. I have put out other videos on cubing which would supplement this, such as market losers, cube efficiency, cubing basics. So go through my playlist and look at other areas, because often with intermediate players, they're good at checker play and maybe not quite so good at cube play, and that's something to work on, something we can all improve. Yeah.
Here's to another 52 episodes, Dan.
I'll keep on going. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Geoff, for coming on, and hopefully, you know, you'll come on again in the future and do the sequel. Maybe we can have a trilogy of Eyesight videos, and who knows?
I have to find a feature for the trilogy, but I'm sure there is.
No, I look forward to having you back on in the future, and thank you so much for going through it so kind of articulately and clearly, and it's a great asset, I think, for the audience, and something that's definitely worth going over and practicing. Set it up on the board, set it up on XG, and see how you get on. The comments you made, the calculations, Geoff, I will put up into the video description as well, so people can just refer to that as well. Any final words, Geoff?
It really is just to enforce the fact that no count system is going to be foolproof, and there will be times where you'll put maybe a slightly weird position on the screen on XG and get a double when in fact it's a big, a slight error not to double, or an error not to double. You've got to remember that XG will factor in other things that are not just those bullet points, like a really heavily stacked point, or a couple of open points, which tend to be more damaging than perhaps the +1 that you give. So don't worry if you do get some varying results if you start putting extreme in. But on the whole, as you said, it's a very good guide, and anything's better than a stab in the dark.
Yeah, and our Benjamin himself, who was at the UK Open, he said eyesight is correct something like 76% of the time. He said, but as you said, 76% is a lot better than 0%. Not knowing. It's been a pleasure, Geoff. I look forward to seeing you at the next tournament. Happy dice. Keep rolling.
And thanks for inviting me along with your esteemed list of guests that you've had today. I feel very privileged joining onto that list, and I wish you a further elongated list in the future, which I may or may not be joining in.
I hope so. Cool. Thank you so much, Geoff, for coming along today. All the best.
Okay, then. All the best.
Bye-bye.